guys, welcome back to another episode on Rebuilding You. I am Min.
I'm Kai.
And today, as you can already tell from the title, we have a very special guest with us, Jack. Woo! Hi, Jack.
Okay, so Jack, can you introduce yourself a little for our viewers?
Sure. Hi everyone. My name is Jack. I am a current graduate student at the Graduate College of Social Work here at the University of Houston in Texas. I am originally from Puchong, Selangor, where I grew up, but my parents are from Kuching, Sarawak, and yeah, that's in a nutshell. I don't know anything else that y'all need to know. I'm studying to be a clinical social worker, so I am aiming to work in therapy settings. And
so we invited Jack here today to share his experience on his journey of self-acceptance. So what is self-acceptance to you? What is your definition of it?
Yeah, I guess to me, when I think about self-acceptance, I always first think about what gets in the way of self-acceptance, right? Like, I think when I look back on when I was a child, I see photos of myself like eating a lot and laughing really loud. And, at some point in my life, I was like, I was taught, I shouldn't eat that much or I shouldn't laugh that loud, right? Because, family members start saying, oh, you're starting to get fat. Or, people are like, oh, that's not the right way to behave in certain settings, right? So I always think about that in the sense that throughout time, we learn a lot of things that we should be ashamed of. We learn a lot of shame from our families and from our society, and in that sense, those are the things to me that get in the way of self-acceptance. And for me, I think thinking about self-acceptance, that's really largely, a lot of it involves unlearning a lot of the things that we've learned when we were growing up.
I agree with that. I think all of us here can relate to that. When we grow up, when the adults say some things that were quite hurtful, they didn't think that it would be hurtful. To them, they're just commenting oh, Jiamin, have you gained weight? Look at that shirt, it's getting tight. And to them, it's just a simple comment. But when you were younger, you didn't know how to differentiate. Oh, it's okay that my shirt is tight. You just straight away go oh crap, I'm getting fat. That's all you think of, and you'll be really hurt. And when you try to express it to your parents, I feel like in my case, when I was younger and I tried to express feelings to my parents, I am sad or really affected by this. Maybe they just think oh, you're a child. You don't know what sadness or getting upset means. To you, these small matters upset you, but you haven't seen the real thing. That's what I feel like parents do that sometimes. Yeah, I know that it's not intentional, but yeah, it's just something to keep in mind. All these small things, small comments, no matter how small it is to you, but to that person, that child right now, it affects them a lot. Yeah. Moving on, second question is just, are you okay with sharing with us your self-acceptance journey?
Sure. I think when I think about my journey, I feel like it's something that's I think it's for me, when I think about the journey, it's continued. I don't feel like there's, at least at this point in my life, I don't feel like there is a destination, in the sense that I'm not going to wake up one day and be oh my God, I'm completely happy with everything in my life. You know what I mean? There are days where I am happier with my body, and there are days where I'm not as happy with my body. There are days where I'm happy with my living situation, or what I'm eating, or how I'm thinking, where my head is at, my mind space. And then there are days that are less. So in terms of bigger life events, when I'm thinking about shame, I feel one of the biggest things, I think family does tie in a lot, as you said, especially when we're growing up as kids, we don't really know any better. I don't want it to sound like, like, oh, like there's a perfect parent, like, and parents do terrible things to their kids and that's why we're messed up for the rest of our lives, because that's not true. I mean, it's really hard to parent, and you're gonna, people will mess up at one point or another, like in little ways, right? These are not things that we can always know how these things affect our kids, and there are some things that are inevitable. Like I think about like when I was growing up, my brother is really more artistic and creative, right? In a way, like, so he was really good at drawing. He was like he used to draw like mangas and then like sell it to the local bookstores. Wow. And my dad would be so proud, and I would try to draw and it would be like stick figures, like 4-year-old level kind of drawing. And obviously my dad wasn't as proud, and I could tell, like I was just like, okay, well, that means I suck. And there was a lot of shame around that. Obviously I was just like, oh, I'm not artistic, and I can't do these creative things that my brother can. So again, sometimes it's just these things that are like not intentional and not, they're just, it'll just happen. And it still took me a long time to kind of be okay with understanding that, like, there might be other ways that I can pursue being creative, and there might be, that I can try and I can still learn and I can still grow, because a lot of that shame was like, well, why bother? You're not going to be as good as your brother anyways, so why even try? So yeah, I think that's one example of like a lot of different journeys of self-acceptance that I've had. I'm not sure if I should keep going.
You should. Please, just go on. Yeah, just tell us, like, what are the biggest challenges that you face, like, it's related to shame or self-acceptance? Yeah,
I think the reason why I'm so attuned to shame was, the biggest one I feel like has been my queer identity. So around when I was pretty much, since always, I kind of knew that I was not the same as everyone else, to put it like, as a kid, I don't have the terms, I don't have the words for it yet. So maybe 8 or 9 or 10, I was like, oh, like I'm a little different. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure. And then 10 or 11, I kind of knew. I was like, oh, I'm attracted to other men. Like this is not normal. This is, I shouldn't talk about it. Maybe it's like I don't want to bring anything up. And then by 11 or 12, when I knew, like, oh my gosh, like this is it doesn't seem like it's going away, it doesn't seem like it's changing, that was when I really fell into a lot of shame, because to me, I think it was a lot of little things, right? Like, so of course there were things, as we talked about, like family would say, that kind of reinforced the idea of like, oh, like you should meet a girl, you should have a girlfriend, and you should marry a woman. But there are also a lot of like more societal things where, I don't know, growing up in Malaysia, I guess I never really saw any open and out like queer folks, gay folks, lesbian folks, any kind of folks like that. And even if there were, like, it was kind of like disparaging, right? Like I remember like going to KL and just walking, and then I had my cousins with me, and they just pointed at a group of girls and they were like, oh, look at those lady boys, like saying things that are very, I don't know, it's just kind of disparaging, that they're laughing at them, like, oh, they're so and so, like they're not real people, or like kind of the connotations that you get from that, like, so to me, I feel like those are the things that like I carried with me growing up that I didn't even know were going to affect me as much as I was growing up, until like day after day when I think about it, I'm like, oh wow, these are such arbitrary rules, right? Like that society is structured in a way that people who are queer or people who are not normative, right, not living as straight and don't feel like they don't fit in or they don't deserve to be in a public eye. So that's kind of like the biggest shame point for me, like when I was growing up. And self-acceptance really was actively like seeking out people who lived as like open and out gay queer people, whether that was through TV shows and movies. So I was really thankful that I don't know if I can say this on camera, but like you can torrent a lot of like American media in Malaysia. And we didn't really clamp down on that. So I watched a lot of like American media that had queer characters on it, and through that I feel like slowly but surely I got more comfortable, because I was able to see that people like me were able to be accepted, were able to work, were able to live, were able to like not be giant disappointments to their family that that will never recover. So I think that was the kicking off point of self-acceptance for me in terms of my queer identity.
So how did you overcome that? Like, how did you not let those voices into your head and like affect you as much?
I won't say I didn't let it affect me, because obviously I think it still does at different points in my life. I mean, obviously not as much as it did before, because I am pretty much out and I live my life the way that I want to in terms of being queer. But yeah, I mean, shame is so powerful, because I think when you think about shame, it really is the fear of like people not accepting you, and people not, that you're no longer worthy of love, you're no longer worthy of belonging just because of who you are or certain parts of you, right? So whether that's shame about a queer identity, or whether that's shame about your body or an ability, talent, like all it comes down to is like, if people know this about me, or people see about me, that they will not accept me. So it took a lot of me, I think, surrounding myself with other people who did accept me, who were also, right? I feel like that's the kind of the importance and the power of community, because it affirms and validates you, even if it wasn't like directly like, hey, oh my god, like you are this person and therefore I accept you and love you. It was just like, it was an unspoken thing where it's like, hey, you're this and I'm kind of like that too, and it's okay because we're just living our life. And even that kind of like minor validation, like slowly but surely it built, right? And I think it was a process. Again, like going back to unlearning, like that was the whole process of unlearning, like, oh my god, like there isn't life, and there isn't like just ridicule and just like hate for people like this, and that we can keep going. And there are actually people, even though we don't show it in media, even though we don't see it in public, but there are other like Malaysian folks who are living their lives as like gay, queer folks in society. So yeah.
I think Jack mentioned, I guess it was one method, which is kind of like surround yourself with the right people, and gradually it just builds up your confidence and also worthiness. It gives you a sense of worthiness when other people accept you as well. So besides that, what else do you practice in order to accept yourself?
Yeah, because I understand like you can't always be surrounded by people like you, whether that's like physically, or just that there might be no one else that are similar to you. One thing is that another thing, I guess, is to be conscious of what we're hearing and what we're consuming in terms of, especially for me, I think media is a huge thing, right? So like social media, I actually just downloaded TikTok recently and it was, I mean, they designed TikTok to be super addictive, honestly, like, and I like fell into it really bad. But social media, it can be very I don't want to say toxic, but it can be it can promote a lot of ideals that are not attainable for people. Not realistic. Thank you. And I mean, it can be the same with Instagram, right? Like I think a lot of people there are filtered, and not only do you see a lot of that kind of content put in your face, but also there is actually a system to quantify how likable that content is, right? So especially like on TikTok, on Instagram, like you know, sometimes it's easy to see an image or a video and be like, okay, like this is doctored, or this is they might have worked really hard on this and that's why they look this certain way, or they can do these certain things, but it's also kind of hard sometimes to look at the amount of likes and the amount of, that number that you're comparing yourself to. Now you're like, oh my god, like I have certain number of validations, right, from people, and this person has a lot more. So what is it about me, or what is it that about what I'm doing? And slowly it builds, right? Like it's little by little by little, you start internalizing these kinds of things, that you're not enough, that you're not doing this enough, you're not doing that enough. And yeah, I think that builds shame, and that gets in the way of self-acceptance, right? Like you constantly keep striving. I think one of the biggest quotes that I always try to remember is, I forgot, I think it was by Carl Rogers. Let me see. Actually, I'm going to Google it before I butcher it.
Yeah.
Here, there we go. Yeah, it is by Carl Rogers. And it says, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." And yeah, I really, really, really like this quote, because, there's always going to be things about ourselves that we want to change and we want to strive for, and that's healthy, right? Like to strive for personal growth, self-development, but shame is not the way to do it, right? It's not, you don't change something because you feel bad about yourself. You have to be okay with who you are now, before you can actually engage in the change that you want to see. One example is like, if you're looking at, body image, that's a huge issue for a lot of people. And there's a lot of fat shaming and fat phobia, right, going on. And, if we internalize a lot of those messages and we feel bad about our bodies, it might lead to excessive exercise or excessive dieting. And what happens the next time you turn on your social media or you look at a magazine and you see these things, and then you start feeling bad about yourselves, and then you resort to more different like coping mechanisms, whether that's again more excessive exercise or dieting that's not healthy, or some people really just like give up and start binge eating and all of these things that like don't actually help you towards your goals. So to me, I feel like, the work always starts up here, right? Like what is going on, and are we ready to actually like face ourselves as we are and be okay with who we are before we commit to making that change? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. I guess what we wanted to move on to next was supposed to be, how do you currently practice self-acceptance? Because we think of this whole process as something that will have relapses. It's it's not a one-way thing. We will always relapse, right? So when that happens, do you have like a procedure or kind of like steps that you will do?
Yeah, I wish I was at that place where I've documented that kind of things, and to be like, okay, like let's get into it right now. Like I hear the shit going on. Like let me whip it out. No,
it's not that easy. It's not. Yeah.
I feel like maybe you could, like maybe if you tracked it down and you were as diligent with journaling as some people might be. That I'm personally not very diligent with it, so maybe if I was, I could figure it out. But it's different each time, and you're right. I think there are relapses, or there are just days where it's not as great as others, right? So please be kind to yourself. But it can be really hard, right? Like sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I have nothing to do, nothing that I really look forward to. And then, there's like the little thoughts in your head that go like, oh my god, like you're not doing well, huh? You're kind of like really bad at this. Like you're really bad at quarantine. So, which is, fair. I've never been quarantined before, so this is big learning. So yeah, again, that's really hard. That's a rumble for me to like accept myself. Mm-hmm. Even when I'm not like working or studying or being able to go out for walks and cope as well as I used to. So I'm trying my best to do like journal a lot. Meditation has been big, right? Just sitting with myself and being like, okay, I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to worry about anything. I'm just gonna be for a few moments, and then learning new ways, like downloading like House Party. I don't know if y'all have that app where it's like you can like video chat and play games with your friends on your phone, which is kind of cute. I like it. It's a little bit buggy, but it's kind of cute. I deleted TikTok just because I was like, oh, this is not helping me right now, right? So little things that I'm noticing that's not serving me, that's not like, that's Yeah, and again, it goes back to like having that journaling space or having that mind space where you can actually identify what are the things that are serving you and not serving you to be able to like make the changes that you want to see in your life. So yeah, I mean, that was a very long answer, but that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
It's fine. I think part of being able to be okay with yourself is also admitting to yourself, I am not doing well, but that's okay.
Like just acknowledging and validating your own feelings and your own situation. I think rather than denying it or like pushing it to the side.
And if you can't give yourself, I think if you can't give yourself that grace, then reaching out to someone who you trust and you feel like can give you a listening ear, right? Like, you know, you don't always have to do it all by yourself. It's kind of hard sometimes to do that. So I'm grateful to have friends that I reach out to as well to be like, okay, like y'all, I'm not doing very well today. Yeah, it's just tears and like not getting out of bed for hours. So yeah.
I like that. I like reaching out to our friends because sometimes for my case, I can become so shameful that I don't even want to tell it to my friends because I don't want them to know that I'm not doing well. But one thing I've learned is that when you reach out and tell someone about your own struggles, whatever that's going on in your mind, it can actually help a lot. It's kind of like journaling, but you're doing it verbally. And like what you said, finding the right people who will accept you and be open to listen to you, I think that's really important as well. So I'm really grateful to have friends like that, like Kai. Like when I feel, honestly, like whenever I feel really down, it just feels really good to have someone that you can go to. Maybe you can be skeptical at first, you're not sure whether like I can trust this person, but when you just be open, be vulnerable and share, and you never know, maybe you find a really good friend, a really good listening ear who's very supportive of you. Yeah,
I guess when I think about vulnerability, as you were saying, like I think about Brene Brown, she's a professor at UH, where I'm at right now. And she does a lot of work in vulnerability and shame, which is where I learned a lot of this stuff from as well. And, you know, I think about it in terms of like, you know, when we think about shame and we think about that, the messages come from outside, right? A lot of the times, you know, whether that's from other friends or that's from other families. So I think sometimes the healing has to also come from outside. If the wounds are relational, then the healing has to be relational as well. We can only do so much by ourselves, and that's true for anyone and everyone. And yeah, I think you really know really quickly who you can trust and who you feel comfortable with when you get vulnerable, right? Like depending on how they respond, that's how you know whether you have a friend that you can trust and you can rely on, you know, whether that's like, and I think about it a lot because there are ways to respond with sympathy and then there are ways to respond with empathy, and they are very different things. I think a lot of people often I often confuse the two, I guess, because, you know, a sympathetic response can be like, oh, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. That's so hard for you. Like, your life is so messy right now, versus like someone who is like empathetic and is going to be on your side, right? Someone who's like, oh gosh, like what you're going through, that's a lot, like tell me more. And you know, I'm really glad you told me. Like I don't even know what to say. Like what you're going through is so terrible, but I'm just so glad that you shared that with me. You know, like even just that is so different than like yeah, that sucks. You know, like so it's hard. Being empathetic is hard because it requires you to connect with something in yourself that understands like being in that space, being in that shame, being in like, oof, like this is really hard for me to say, and I'm really taking a leap here by even telling you. So you know, like being empathetic and having an empathetic friend, that's, to me, like that's always like a treasure.
So what's your advice for someone who's really struggling like what you did before? Who's going through maybe the similar challenges that you did before?
Ooh, wow. That's really tough. I think when I think about advice, I feel like there's not really anything that I can ever say to make it feel like what they're going through is easier. You know, even if I think about going back to where I was, I really don't know what I would say, honestly, that could ever make that better. I just know that there is so much strength in all of us. And there is so, like, sometimes we often feel, especially in our moments when we're at our lowest, is when we feel our weakest. But that's when, you know, the strength that we have really show, right? Like when you're so tired that you don't want to get out of bed, when you have no motivation and you don't feel like doing anything, when you feel like there's no point in living your life anymore because, you know, it doesn't really matter and nothing really matters anymore, and you're still able to, like, you're still able to keep going, and you're still able to even just wake up and just sit up and just go to the restroom, because that's, you know, sometimes that's how I feel some days, right? Like when you feel so low that you just don't see the point, then it's one thing at a time. It's just like you're celebrating the fact that, okay, I got up and I took a shower today, and that's a win. Because, you know, that could easily fall off the table. I cooked myself some food and I ate today, and that's big. I was able to put on clothes today. So yeah, to me, I feel like I think when you're low, recognize that it's not going to be that way forever. Hopefully. I really hope, because I can't promise that, right? Like, I can't promise that it'll not be that way forever, but I know that, you know, life has a way of giving you downs and ups, right? Like, and we have to be able to appreciate the ups when they come, because the downs will come too, and that's just that, you know, that's just a fact of life. Oh my God, I am like all over the place. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna say, because I really don't know what advice I would give.
It's alright, but I really like it, what you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, being alive is already such a blessing.
Yes,
in itself.
yeah,
like,
it's already
what are the chances of you being alive, like, as a human in this world, in this era, you know, with internet and everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you said about the small things, I think that is really, really important, especially for people with like depression, because when you're like in a very deep state of depression, you don't really feel like doing anything. You can't even get out of bed. So the fact that you are out of your bed and the fact that you're taking a shower or you're feeding yourself is really a big win, like you said. So I feel like we should give credit to ourselves for that.
Yeah.
Aww. Yeah, I wish y'all were there to give me advice. I'm like, I can't think of it, but that was beautiful.
No, you just repeated what you said.
You just repeated what you said, yeah.
That was you.
Yeah, it was all you, yeah. Yes.
What do you already love and accept about yourself?
Yeah, I think this is definitely easier. You know, I said there are days, but there are definitely things that I have more reasons, right? Like, I've come up with so many reasons to love myself for. Like, I really love my hair. It is a little messy right now. I have not gotten it cut, but I like that it's really
not messy.
Very messy. Yeah. Oh my God, this is really long. I really want to get it cut, but I like it a lot. I like that it's thick, and I never had any trouble with it. It's always there. So yeah, hopefully. I mean, it's not gonna be there forever. I know that. I guess. I'll appreciate it while it's here. I really like, just in like what my energy can be. I know that, you know, it's not always that I'm very positive and very bubbly and very chatty, but there are situations where I can be, and I'm very appreciative of that, right? Because I really like being in that headspace, and I really like being that person, you know, in the crowd that has kind of like the hype man personality, you know. It's like, oh my God, like, we're having a good time, all of us. So, you know, being able to do that, I just feel like it's such a gift that, like, I really appreciate. And I really like that I've been able to overcome so much in my life, right? Like, again, like, we are all resilient, and we're all resilient in different ways. And to me, that's been being able to figure things out when so much has gone wrong before, being able to, you know, even though I don't like value myself on like achievements and stuff like that, it's still nice, you know, to have like a kind of like a, what is it called? like a marker. I don't know. I guess like a little, yeah, like a little marker of like, hey, like you actually did all of that, you know? Because sometimes you feel like, what did I do? And then you think like, oh my god, like, well, you graduated university and you graduated high school and you like have friends that like took photos with you, like they like you enough to like want you to be in their photos. So so you know, like little things, whether that's like achievements to like even mementos and stuff like that. You know, yeah, I really love all of it. So
Yeah, when you said like you like your energy that is like very hype up and positive, we can feel that like in your Instagram stories and all. We can really feel the energy.
Yeah, I like that. And I also really like how you said you like how you achieved something. You love that. You love how you achieved certain things in your life, which is really important. Giving yourself credit. Yeah. It's not boasting or anything. There's nothing wrong with loving yourself. I feel that some people might struggle with this, which is admitting that they love a certain part of themselves. Maybe they are actually proud that they overcame something, or they did a certain or they made a certain achievement, but they are not proud of it because people think that it's small or it's not worth boasting about. Yeah.
True, absolutely. I think when you were saying that, I feel like I thought of a lot of like Instagram and what I post and what I write on there, most of the times it's really for myself, in the sense of like what I need, in terms of like what I need to write out or what I need to remind myself of, then that's what I post. And you know, I think, as you said, like there is no, you know, like there is a lot of fear and a lot of like shame too around like being perceived a certain way, like, oh, I don't want to seem like I am stuck up or boastful. But I think you can do it in a way where, you know, if your intention is not to shame anyone or to, you know, because there are certain people who do things who are like, oh, I'm sharing this because I'm better than you, you know, like very few people do that. But if you know that you're not doing it for that reason, then there should be no barrier to like, hey, I'm really proud of this that I made or this that I did. So for sure.
Yeah, I like that. And also I like where you said, which Jamin also mentioned, like you said that you're proud of yourself for achieving milestones, I guess.
Yeah, milestones, yes.
Milestones, that's the word.
Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, and I feel like most of us, a lot of us, we don't take the time to kind of be mindful about what we've achieved. Like after we achieve something, we just get on with our lives, and it's like it's a whole rush, like, okay, high school, and then next, what's next? Oh, college, what's next? Getting a degree, what's next? Getting a job and stuff like that. And we don't really sit down and think about what we've done, even though, I mean, like graduating, getting a degree is a big thing. Like there's a lot of people who don't have that privilege, but we don't really think a lot about it, and then we just keep focusing on what's next, and we never look back and to see what we've achieved. So I really like that point of yours. Yeah.
Oh, I just thought of something really funny was, as you said, like we often don't, we move on so quick we don't even remember. I just remember one time when I was in college, and one of my roommates was really like one of my roommates was just oblivious to how to cook at all. And one time she tapped me on the shoulder. She was like, Jack, can you teach me how to fry an egg? And then I was like, do you not know how to fry an egg? And I didn't say it, but I was like, sure, let me teach you how to fry an egg. And then so, you know, like I taught her, and she was frying the egg on the egg pan, and she looked at me, she was like, I'm frying an egg. I'm just like, I'm so happy for you. And that was just so good. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that's the end of our episode today. So it's just really about us discussing what self-acceptance is, and yeah, we hope that whatever Jack has said has given you like a little bit of guidance, just a little bit. You don't have to follow it completely, just take it with a pinch of salt. If it doesn't work for you, it's fine, but if it does, do try it out. I'm sure that it will help you even a little bit. And Yeah, maybe we will do another episode with Jack the next time. Stay tuned. We will also link his Instagram. You can check out his posts. He does share some really fun things as well as really good quotes. So yeah, I guess that's it. Stay tuned for another episode. Bye.
All right, thank y'all for having me.
Thank you so much, Jack, for doing this with us.
Thank you so much.